It's no secret that cars these days are getting bigger, but so is their appeal. People want them to be more and do more, and they are. But it should come as no surprise then that a Mini Cooper is less mini these days, but that doesn't mean that the brand has completely lost its direction. Look no further than this convertible and some iconic lettering to provide all the proof you need of that, or at least all the proof that I need. From across the parking lot, this is clearly going to look like a Mini Cooper, but when you get closer, you can start to see some of these changes and some of the more modernization of the model. For example, these headlights, I think, are a perfect representation of that. We have the same circular design that people know and love of the Mini brand, but the lighting elements inside, well, those are much more square, but they're also customizable. And you do all of that from the touchscreen inside. So with software, you can now change the way your Mini Cooper looks rolling down the road, and that's definitely a fun feature. The rest of the design is still pretty much true to form. Again, a little bit more angular. My favorite actual piece of this front end is going to be that S badge over there, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. I do appreciate, obviously, we have British Racing Green, still one of the many colors you can get your Mini Cooper in, and for this particular model, we've got a gold mini badge, and I would probably go ahead and order mine that way because I have to admit, it looks really good. I mentioned that the Mini's gotten bigger, but this generation isn't that much bigger than last, so slowing that growth rate is definitely a plus in my book. That means we get to keep the Mini longer. And this convertible is going to be based off the two-door, and really the only dimensional difference is a whole 0.2 inches longer, and I'm suspecting it has something to do with different bumper designs because we don't have a hatch here, we have a trunk, so that's probably where you get those extra 0.2 inches. But this is going to be one of the smallest ways you can get it. It's still under 153 inches, one of the smaller cars available, but it is still a four-seater, and it is as customizable as ever. And that's one of the things I really enjoy, is you can get a small car in whatever way you want it. Now, unfortunately, I don't think I'll get a chance to look at the 17-inch wheel designs today. I think we'll mostly have the 18s. That's exactly what we have here, but you still have a ton of different wheel designs. If you want a little more tire, that 17 is probably the way to go. But if you have the convertible, that whole noise isolation and less noise with a little bit more rubber probably isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. And in that case, I don't really mind that we only have an 18-inch wheel here today. But the top is why you would go ahead and get a convertible. And this is still the two-door option. Easy enough to get in and out of, but if you want to open this up, there are now two different ways you can do it. You can open it up in a partial opening setting, and that's going to mostly appear something like a moonroof or a sunroof. So it'll slide back and go till about here, which for me is going to be still in front of my head and smaller than most moonroofs in most vehicles, but this isn't why you buy it. You buy it so that you can go ahead and open it all the way up. And when you have it open, Mini will actually tell you how long you've been driving around in your car with this top all the way down. And if nothing else, it's encouragement, because just a reminder, you bought a convertible, you should absolutely get the most out of it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, is I'm going to go for a bit of a drive. All right, I almost got ahead of myself and drove off not only without my camera gear, but without our editor who's behind the camera. So I figured I'd circle back and load up the trunk. But while I did so, I'd show you what's going on back here. It is going to be a different design from the hatchback, but from this point down, everything is pretty similar. One thing to note, though, about the Mini Cooper and Cooper S is that there are no visible exhaust tips here on the back. If you want an exhaust tip, you have to go with the John Cooper Works, but we'll cover that as soon as we get behind the wheel of one. The trunk itself is a little bit limited in space, but so too is the Cooper in general. But we do have a fair amount of space back here. It's just loading isn't always going to be the easiest. But to make it easier, when you have the top up, you can actually open up this secured hatch piece, and that's going to make loading your stuff in and out of the vehicle that much easier. Like I said, there isn't a ton of space back here, but I can go ahead and slide that bag and that bag without too much issue. Here we go. I can strap these back down like so. And if I'm ready to go, I can close the trunk, or as long as you are under 80 kilograms, you can safely sit here on the back and do a little bit of tailgating. Under the hood of every Mini Cooper model, you'll find a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, but not all engines are created equal within this lineup. The base model starts at 161 horsepower, 184 pound-feet of torque, and given the size of the car, it's not a bad pairing. But we're looking at the more fun models, and that means we start with the S model at 201 horsepower, 221 pound-feet of torque. But even though this looks a lot like the S model we were looking at a little bit earlier, this is actually the John Cooper Works, just albeit still in that British Racing Green. John Cooper Works means better suspension and more power, and that's exactly what we get here. It's a departure from those other two engines. This is not just simply tuning. We're looking at 228 horsepower and up to 280 pound-feet of torque. And the biggest bump in power is actually on the torque end of things over the previous John Cooper Works model, and it's about 35 pound-feet of torque. So we're talking about a pretty significant bump. But all of them are running that power through a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, though that transmission is a little bit different again here in the John Cooper model. But everything should be about 30 miles per gallon combined. I'm not sure I'll get a chance to test that out today, but that's according to Mini. I'm jumping between models a little bit today, so as you can see, we are in the two-door, not the convertible model, and this is the John Cooper Works, which means that we do get some different seating. The interior layout is similar, but the seats here are definitely more bolstered than you'll find in the S or the standard Cooper. But me being a little bit wider, I'm probably about as wide as you would want to be to sit in these seats pretty comfortably. I have decent room up top, but in the leg area, things are a little bit squished, but it is very supportive, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be. I also have quite a few adjustments here, and a little bit unusual, but you do have your position memory seating here. It's just located not in the door or up on the dash somewhere. It's actually located on the seat itself. As far as the back seat, well, it exists, but well, just give me a second. I made it back here, and it wasn't as difficult as one might assume. When getting through to the rear, sliding this forward is a two-step process. The first is manual, and it's manual to get it to tilt, and then the mechanism takes over and it automatically slides itself forward. Same thing when you put it back. So if I slide this back in its current position, you could put somebody in there, probably not the biggest person, but I have an inch or so of leg room. If you wanted to make the seating a little more vertical and slide further back, that is also an option. What I don't have any extra of is headroom, and really I ran out a couple inches ago, but I could make it work for short time periods. There is a window back here, and because there's a big moonroof, I don't feel totally cramped, even though I am a little bit. The big thing is that this hump here, I would love to see that be something more of a armrest of sorts, because there's no third seat, and you definitely wouldn't want to put 3 people back here. Those who are back here do have an armrest on each side, and you do have a cup holder, so you can make do if you need to, but not something you're going to use on an everyday basis, and certainly not something you're going to want to try and put kids here in the back who are in car seats. Sorry about all the changing of the cars here, but we haven't had nearly as much time with each as we would like, and there are a lot of fun minis to take a look at. What we're in right now is the Convertible S, which means that the themes are going to be different, but the overall layout between the base model, the S, and the JCW are pretty similar. Biggest difference is going to be in those seats. The long and short of that is if you want more versatile seating, go ahead and get an S. If you want more aggressive seating, that's where you'll get in the JCW. But one of the things I like about the S is that we have a lot of more varied themes. On the JCW, it's much more aggressive, it's much more racy and sporty. But here we get a much lighter interior and a couple of cool accent pieces. Not only just different materials or layouts, but that stripe is kind of like it's a seat belt, but obviously it's not strapping anything down. It's just there for a design. And we get a lot of that extra accenting pieces throughout this interior. For example, this is going to be the optional, I guess, cubby holder. It says Mini right here, but it's got the same colored strap that opens up and it's a little storage container. We also find that sort of strap located on this steering wheel. It's going to be acting basically like a third spoke. And as much as I've never seen this before, I also think I really enjoy it. A two-spoke design is just fine, and the steering wheel itself is very comfortable, but this just makes it more unique, a little more interesting, and again, that texture is very seatbelt-like, but obviously not trying to do any securing, just there to spice things up. But most of this interior is going to be carried with this center screen, and this screen is the end-all, be-all, and it's the single screen that I don't think anyone had ever really thought they'd need or ask for, because it's circular. There are so many cars, especially electric vehicles, that have a lot of screen or one screen, and that one screen does everything, and that's exactly what we have here. As far as the functions go, everything is here. We do have one extra display. It's going to be hard to point out here because, well, just because of the way the camera is going to work with it, but this will rotate. The whole piece rotates in and out, up and down, and that's actually how you adjust the display there. But the display is technically a heads-up display, but really it's just taking the place of a driver gauge because there isn't one here. And actually, I appreciate that because it would have just taken up more space. If you want to know more about the infotainment screen or the rest of this interior, I'll post a link in the video description to our full review of the 2025 Mini Cooper we had a chance to take a look at a few weeks ago. If you want the Mini with the mostest when you're out on the road, it's going to be this one. This is the John Cooper Works two-door. And the reason the two-door is going to be a little bit more serious than the convertible is because it doesn't have the extra weight that a convertible needs for reinforcement because it has a fixed roof. which really means that it's going to be the best in the corners. It's also going to be the best in a straight line. This will run 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds. On the convertible, same engine, basically the same platform, you're looking at 6.2. So just not quite as serious. And unfortunately, I don't have a ton of room, but if I punch it, you can hear that turbo spool up. You can also hear a lot more noise than this car is actually probably putting out. And that's because we get quite a bit of piped in noise and some digital enhancements to go with it. But if you want exhaust at all, the only Mini Cooper right now with an exhaust outlet is gonna be the John Cooper Works. And it's also an interesting center exhaust layout, but I think I'm down with it. But when you move up from an S to a JCW, what you are gonna be compromising is gonna be quality of ride. This is a lot less comfortable in day-to-day driving than you'll find on the S. So if you have an S and you just want something that feels a little bit faster, JCW might not be the right way to go. But if you like carving up the canyons and the back roads and you want the most serious Mini you can get, you're looking at it right here. It also comes with the seats to boot. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but these are definitely on the tighter side. They're gonna do a really good job of holding you in place because this is meant to be the Canyon Carver. And the only thing really holding it back in that regard is that it's front wheel drive. But I don't think it's really holding it back. I think it's part of that Mini experience because there are plenty of front wheel drive performance cars out there. Think of something like a Civic Type R, where you know that it's not maybe the preferred or the prime driving position or the driving layout, but it's still a whole lot of fun, and that's exactly what we get here. We'll take this off the line, and again, you can tell there's a little bit of a delay, but once this thing kicks in, it gets going, and the shifts are a lot more aggressive than what you're gonna find on the S. So just keep that in mind when it comes to friendly transmissions. This one's working just a little bit harder. But what this isn't meant for is the road tripping, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now. There was a site to go take a look at, and there and back again. This is comfortable enough for me, but for folks who want maybe a little bit more out of the dollar amount, because this is not an inexpensive car, then you're probably gonna wanna look elsewhere. But what you do get, and for me this is an absolute first, let me know in the comments if there's a vehicle that I've missed, is for me this is the first time I've ever had an AR system-built, integrated navigation system. The way this works is fairly simple. We've got a camera up front where normally it's going to be built in and acts as your surround view camera, which is kind of ironic because this is one of the easiest cars to park anywhere. It's so small. But what it's going to do is integrate with the built-in navigation and tell you on screen a live view of what you're seeing in front of you and then project where those turns are going to be and some other information as well. So that's kind of an interesting layout. The fact that it's paired with this heads-up display that will also give you directions is probably the best way to do it because sometimes it's not totally clear what's happening there on that screen, or maybe it's just that I haven't adjusted to it because it is a new technology, at least to my eye, but it's neat. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about a Mini is that it's just an interesting driving experience. Not only is that whole center display kind of fun, but that's the first time that I've had AR built into a car. And you can tell that Mini has done a lot of work on this vehicle, and this next generation is set to do pretty well. I have had a chance to open this one up just a little bit, but this isn't the ideal driving layout. Let's see if I can find something just a little bit better. And if you want the most fun, you get this. John Cooper Works 2-door, and you punch it, and you just wait for that turbo to kick in because this is, as far as I'm concerned, pinnacle of open top motoring, probably under $50,000. Because yes, there are gonna be some other options, but the personality is what makes this fun. This isn't something you're gonna wanna do a ton of miles in. If this is your daily commuter and you are committed to the cause, I applaud you because it's gonna be pretty loud, as you may be able to hear. Obviously top down, it's gonna be louder. Top up, not anywhere near as insulated as you're gonna get on a regular 2-door. It's also not going to be as comfortable because it is the John Cooper Works version and it is gonna be, well, a little more fatiguing on your longer drives. But when you find a little stretch like this and you can listen to that little engine purr, and if you wanna pick up the speed, you can, or just go for a cruise. Again, it's hard to beat something like this, I think, in anything. And the only thing that comes close to this, to me, is something like an MX-5, but it doesn't have the same veracity or tenacity that you get here in this John Cooper Works, so they're not really the same, and I think it's okay to have a bit of a spoil of choices. I know it's only 2, but 2's a lot better than 1, and certainly a lot better than none. But if you want to make the absolute most of your Mini experience, it's this right here. John Cooper Works, convertible, And I can't think of a better little road to go drive. This isn't going to be as fast as that two-door model. It's also not going to handle quite as well, mostly because it's going to be a little bit heavier. But to me, those are pretty small margins and minimal sacrifices to, I guess, compare, because you can't compare a hardtop and a convertible, because one can do this and the other can't. And this one is still a lot of fun. So at the end of the day, if you still are interested in a Mini Cooper, great news, they are here and there are many that you can choose from, but they do come at a bit of a price premium. To enter the Mini Cooper market is with a two-door with the base engine that starts at $30,125, and today has been about fun. So for me, fun means convertible or more power. So let's start on the convertible side, which is a $5,000 increase, $35,125, but at that point I probably do want the S, because more power, more fun. That's going to cost me an extra $3,200. And then from there, it's only $1,000 more for that John Cooper Works two-door, which means the best performance, but not necessarily the same level of fun. You want to go all the way, no holds barred, and you want this model here. That is your convertible John Cooper Works, 228 horsepower. That's going to cost you $44,875. And at the end of it, the car is still only this big. And I think that's where people are going to have a hard time with it. But admittedly, it is a lot of fun. The other things I have written down here are competitors, and that's really hard to nail down because there's just nothing quite like a Mini Cooper, especially one that's juiced up on power, especially one with a convertible. So the convertible is what I wrote down. A Mazda MX-5 is less expensive to start, or right about the same amount as the base Mini Cooper, and that's probably a bit more fun, but once you start adding power, they're two different cars. And at the top end, well, instead of getting a nearly $45,000 John Cooper Works convertible, you could also get yourself a Mustang convertible, which is not, again, the same car, but it's not a bad option, and there's more space for people. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with fun options. There are cars on the road today that are still worth driving that can now do things like meet your infotainment needs with this screen, where an older Mini just was a little bit behind. It's also going to be pretty good on fuel economy, because all of these rated engines, Mini says, will get about 30 miles per gallon, and that's not bad at all. No hybrid options, but what I would trade instead of a hybrid is a manual transmission. And I think that at this point, that's going to take an act of God. So let me know in the comment section if there is an act of God coming, if you are on board for a manual transmission, because to me, that's the only thing missing here. And the Mini lineup, while it is ever changing, I think still has a very good baseline and starts from a very good place. Let me know in the comment section, two-door, four-door, convertible, soup it up with an S or a John Cooper Works, or are you more interested in a bigger version of the Mini Cooper personality, because those exist as well. Thank you so much for watching. Find us on all of our social places, Instagram, Facebook. We also have a new podcast, the Auto Buyer's Guide podcast. You can find that on all your local streaming sites, and you can find us there on YouTube. Till next time, see you down the road.